Hello, it's me, and we are picking up our series of cuboid classifications to now talk about among my most favorite kind of cuboids. We discussed some of the non-shape-shifting ones, the dominoes, which I've lumped together based on their fairly simple solve strategy, and then we moved off into the shape-shifting cuboids over here, which can go 90 degrees in all directions. And now we're going to continue this side of the tracks with more shape-shifting, but this shape-shifting gets a little more complicated. The archetypic brick, well, the archetypic brick, I guess, would be the 1 by 2 by 3. We'll add to that, of course, the 2 by 3 by 4, sort of, and the 3 by 4 by 5, and of course the triumphant 4 by 5 by 6. We may be getting a little busy here with our, so I'm just going to stop short with this over here. And maybe if I lined it up like this, maybe I can fit all these bad boys here. Okay, so these have a very interesting property to them. They are shapeshifters, but they only shapeshift really in two directions. What I'm going to do is, to demonstrate this, I'm going to use ones that either you haven't seen a lot of or perhaps haven't even seen at all. Let me pan this down over here. Now what these are, what these type of brick cuboids are, is they have a form that I'm going to describe, but rather than get into the mathematics of it, let's just say that you have two sides that are even and one that's odd, or two sides that are odd and one that's even. The exact number of the layers doesn't really matter. It could be the 1 by 2 by 3, the 2 by 3 by 4, 2 by 3 by 6, 2 by 5 by 7. All of those are bricks because they fulfill that criteria of two odds and an even, or two evens and an odd. Now what the characteristics of those kind of puzzles will do is that, yeah, they do shapeshift, but they can't shapeshift in all directions. In this case, with 3 by 4 by 5, you can only shapeshift when you take 3 and make it go down the 5 direction, like this. So here you can do 90-degree turns, but I can't stop with this because this layer only does 180-degree turns. Same thing with the 4 by 5 by 6 over here. Same concept, really. So basically what that means is, because I'm restricted to that, the restrictions of these cuboids are pretty much exactly the same thing as the restrictions of the dominoes. Because the dominoes have exactly the same kind of a form. We can only do 180-degree turns in this direction and in this direction, and we can do 90-degree turns in this direction and continue turning. And because these have exactly the same forms, this represents a shape-shifting version of a cuboid, which means it's obvious to say, it's easy to say that you solve it like a cuboid, like a domino actually, to get it back into the cuboid form. To get these shapeshifters in the cuboid form, because it's 90 degrees in all directions, just like a cube, you solve it just like a cube. You solve it like a cube to get it back to the cuboid form, and then you do domino strategies to solve the rest. Oop, this goes here. With this, because it functions a lot like a domino, you use domino strategies to get to the cuboid form. And then after that, you're done with the domino strategy. You then do a new strategy, which is 180-degree strategies. Now, I've done Rubik's 180 tutorials with a couple of different layers, and those are the algorithms that you need in order to solve these. The puzzle that I'm going to be using to solve this, actually, is going to be a tandem solve, because I've already done a tutorial on this. I've done quite a few on this. What I'm going to pull out in order to demonstrate this is the 3 by 4 by 6. Now, this is something that some of you guys may have seen. We'll move these out of the way for now. But I'm also going to use a 2 by 3 by 5. As you can see over here. Now, although these may look different, they're all bricks. Why are they all bricks? Well, it's not just the fact that they have the same mathematical forms in terms of the layers. The solve strategy is the same, and these actually, for the first time, have parity with them. A kind of a parity that occurs when you reduce it to the cuboid form. Reducing these to the cuboid form didn't cause any parity issues. You solve it like a domino and you're good. These, of course, by definition, can't have any parity with them because they're already reduced to the simplest level. You just have to reduce it down even further. But now what happens with these guys? Well, The definition of parity, really, is when I take a puzzle that has a certain degree of complications and then I reduce it down to a simpler puzzle and solve it like that simple puzzle. So it's really an arbitrary thing. But because it's a more complicated puzzle, if I reduce it down to something more simple, but I reduced it in a way that could not have been scrambled in that position by that simple puzzle, if I scrambled it as the simple puzzle, then we have parity. Parity just refers to the property of being odd or even. So if I take a 4x4 and reduce it down to this guy, a 3x3, I may find myself in a position where it's scrambled into a place that I could never have scrambled into if I started out as a 3x3. Now the rules that I apply to how I reduce it are arbitrary. I'm simply going to take my brick and I'm going to reduce it down to its native form, its cuboid form, and I'm going to assume that I can solve it with 180-degree algorithms. Why do I assume that? Because my first step when I scramble it is I scramble it by 180 degrees. So if I do that, I should be able to solve it using 180-degree algorithms. But if I reduce it in such a way to where I can't do that, if I reduce it in such a way to where I cannot solve it with 180 degrees, then the rules that I'm applying to this as a simpler puzzle don't hold, and that's when I end up with parity. Now, I actually discovered this parity fairly late. I can't tell you how many times I solved Tom Z's 3x4x5 again and again and again and again. But I never encountered parity until it became mass-produced. When it became mass-produced, more people started playing with it, more people started uncovering this strange parity and were asking questions about it. And quite frankly, it was kind of a stumper. It was a new one on me, and I had to really think about it and look to see exactly what's happening with a puzzle before I could see what's going on. And it had to do with the way that I was scrambling it. It was a fairly simple way that I was doing it, and I wasn't encountering that. So how do you get parity with this? Well, when you scramble this by 180 degrees, even though you're taking it out of its, solved form, so to speak, you still are solving, you start scrambling it in a very consistent way where the associations of these pieces hold to certain laws. In other words, when you take a Rubik's Cube, if I completely disassemble this and randomly reassemble it, I might not be able to solve it in this configuration. And that's because even when I scramble it, as I scramble this puzzle, I'm really doing it in a way that's consistent with each other so that I can get it back to where it was. When I'm scrambling this with 180-degree solves, or 180-degree moves, I'm actually keeping all the pieces in a certain association where you can get it back from the new state back to the solved state. Now, as I've scrambled this around, there's another association to understand within this process. These equivalent pieces are either going to be all facing each other here, or if I go like this and like this to make the equivalent pieces facing opposite each other, you're always going to find the other equivalent pieces facing opposite each other as well. So there's going to be an intrinsic symmetry that you're going to get with this puzzle. No matter how scrambled it appears, the equivalent pieces are going to hold the same association with each other. But pretty much the equivalent pieces, if you put these opposite each other, it's going to stay, these guys are going to be opposite each other as well. They may not be in exactly this position, but similar configuration. So what would then happen if I managed to pluck this out and put this opposite here without doing that to the others? If I do that, I've now broken the parity of this puzzle and can no longer solve it like that. Can no longer solve it doing 180-degree turns. So what would happen in that situation? Well, let's get this back. Okay, quickly got that back. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to take two of these and put them back over. I'm looking to take two equivalent pieces, put one just behind it, but not cause the other pieces to be in that same position. Well, the only way to do that is to mix my 180-degree turns with some 90-degree turns. And if I do that, then I'm going to break the parity of this puzzle and cause issues with parity. So what I'll do is we'll start doing a scramble. I'm going to go 2F over here, and then we'll start doing a shape-shifting scramble here. This is actually the algorithm to get out of the situation, but I'll go like U, 2R, UI, 2L, U, 2R, UI, 2L. Simple shape-shifting. Then I'm going to go 2F. Now, consider what I've done is I've taken this green and red and I've put them opposite each other. But these are going to be facing each other. But these are not, only these. I couldn't get it in this position by doing 180-degree moves, notice. But I have these two opposite each other, these equivalent pieces opposite, and I don't have that anywhere else. And like I say, could not be done with 180-degree moves. So now I'm going to break the symmetry here and just move the middle piece down like so, and now take that out of the way. To get it back to the cuboid form, I'm just going to do a simple algorithm or simple set of movements to do that. 2L, U, 2R, UI, 2L, U, 2R, UI, move it back, and then we'll bring this back over here. So let's take a look at what we did. I've got the red and green here, opposite here. But by doing that, by putting the red and green here opposite here, I don't have that anywhere here. I've got these guys all flipped around. So basically I have 1, 2, 3 pieces that are out. So it's like a 3 cycle. But because I don't have the others opposite like I did with this is now parity. This cannot be solved using 180-degree turns. Won't happen that way. So that's how you can walk in that parity, where somehow in your scramble you put two equivalent pieces opposite each other in the midst of your shape-shifting, and then when you put it back to your cuboid form, you ended up with this configuration. So now the question is getting out of it. Well, we're going to get into that later. I just wanted to show you how this occurs and how this parity occurs. Now there is another kind of a parity which is very similar, but it's with the middle layers. And it's where you have a situation where this gets flipped with this. It's kind of like this, it's sort of the same kind of thing where you don't have all of these opposite. Even when they're scrambled, you still have the same configuration of a symmetry of opposites. If this is plucked out and this is plucked out and they're swapped with each other, or this is swapped with this, that's a similar kind of a parity. And that can happen in a situation like this. Okay, what I did is now this is flipped and this is flipped. Ignore these, ignore the ends, but these two guys got flipped. This red here, again, ignore this, and this orange over here. So yeah, this appears to be the left over here, this appears to be over here. So this is another parity that cannot be solved by 180-degree turns. So for the first time, I think in YouTube history, this is a 3x4x5 that shows both parities front and center. One parity in this layer, the other parity in this layer. And we're going to come back to this. Now, when approaching a brick or approaching a puzzle that you think might be a brick based on the configuration, what you want to do is you want to understand that you're really dealing with something like a domino. So take a look at your puzzle and decide which layers can move 90 degrees in terms of each other. In this case, 3 and 5. So this will be the top and this will be the bottom. So you'll be turning it like this and around when you scramble. And just like a domino, just like one of these guys, 2 layers are only going to scramble with each other and the rest will scramble with each other. So these 4 layers are going to scramble with each other, just these 2 layers. Same thing here. 4 layers will scramble with each other. Ta-da, ta-da. But only these 2 layers will scramble with each other over here. So in this case, it would be like that. In this case, it would be held like this. In the case of this cuboid, 2x4, this would be the top and this would be the bottom. It'll be held like this. So when I have these cuboids over here, these bricks over here, this is the 4-layer side here, this is the 6-layer side over here. So this will be the top, this will be the bottom, and it's going to be moving like this. And that's how it's going to be. Over here, this is 3 layers over here, this is 5 layers over here, so this is top, this is bottom, and this will be moving like this. That's all you need in terms of orientation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a scramble with these guys. I notice that there's a lot of black powder that's still issuing forth from this one. This is again made by Klaus and Greg Fenning, another fantastic creation by them. So as I'm doing my 180-degree scramble to start off with, and I'm going to do tandem solves here, I know that what I'm doing, for the most part, as long as I stick with 180-degree scrambles, as long as I stick with that, I'm not breaking the parity of this puzzle. So we're doing okay here. And I know that no matter how I'm doing this, and in terms of these guys, these two are equivalent to each other, right? Orange and yellow, orange and yellow. Well, if these two are opposite each other, guess what? Red and white, red and white, orange, white and orange, white and orange. These, no matter how I scramble it, are going to be opposite each other too. So you can see that there's a very good consistency with how this is scrambled, and you can see how, if that was disrupted in any way, that there would be parity with this. And no matter what I do and how I do this, you're going to find, let's just arbitrarily look, red and yellow. Where is the other red and yellow? It's right opposite here. So I know the rest are going to be opposite each other. These two are opposite. These two are opposite. Sometimes they're opposite here, sometimes they're opposite here, but they're always going to be in the same association with each other, and I know the parity is not broken. Now I'm going to start to wipe all this stuff off. Now scrambling this, exactly the same thing. I'm going to come here. We'll do 180 degree scrambles first. And I'm doing this just to show you the known parity of this puzzle. The known consistency, and how by doing 180 degree turns, I'm locking it into these associations. And it's only by the introduction of 90 degree scrambles do I break that symmetry and thus allow for the potential of parity. And I'm only going to break that symmetry if I do 90 degree turns, in addition to 180 degree turns. So turn, turn. So let's test my theory here. Green and white, not here. Green and white is here. So I know these are going to be opposites, the equivalents, and these are going to be opposites. Turn it over here. So that remains true. That remains exactly the same. Green and white, green and yellow here, green and yellow here. I know that these are also going to be the same. So I hope you understand what I mean, that basically there is a consistency with this that can be broken once I shapeshift. Can I do that? Sure, and I can do it with both puzzles. What if I were to do exactly the same thing? Go turn, U to R, UI to L, U to R, UI to L, double turn. Now what I'm going to do is break the symmetry. It doesn't even matter what's opposite, I've just broke the symmetry. Turn this over here, and we slowly but surely get it back. Here, U, turn here, UI, turn here, U, turn here, UI. Now I can check my work and see if I really did break symmetry. Here's yellow and red. Here's the other yellow and red over here, which means the other should be sandwiched, and it's not. Yellow and orange, uh-oh, white and green. None of the rest are sandwiched, only these two. Only these two have those associations. If I start to associate these guys, this is good over here. And that's all there is. So now there's just one associated with each other. So really, you can see how that parity has been broken. Let's take a look at some more equivalencies. Here's a red and orange. These two are equivalent, which means these should be, but they're not. So we can see that there's trouble brewing. I'm just going to move this over here. So now these two are equivalent. These two aren't. These two aren't, and these two aren't. So I've completely broken the symmetry with that. How about here? Can I do the same thing? Sure, let's give it a try. To F, U, to R, UI, to L, U, to R, UI, to L. Do one of these, do one of these, and do one of these for good measure. to L, U to R, UI to L, U to R, UI. So, did we do it? Well, let's see. These two are equivalents, and they're opposite each other, but none else is. My parity has been broken. Now, any brick can do this. Any brick can demonstrate that, and that's the unique thing about the solve of a brick.